Diffusion, the international science radio show.
We have a bouncer on the doors of perception.
The good, the bad, the ugly.
It gets pretty exciting.
The myths, the truths.
Toxicology.
Astroseismology.
Magnetism. The dark side.
Genetically engineered potatoes.
Planetoid.
I
love that word.
Hello and welcome to Diffusion. Sit back and relax while we electronically sniff out the aroma of weird and wonderful science in your brain. I'm Ian Woolf. The final interviews from the Consumer Electronics and Business Information Technology Convention in Sydney on electronic noses and mechanised board games. And you'll hear the first talks of the fresh scientists putting their research to the pub test in the time it takes for a sparkler to burn down. Metamorphing board games? John Teague is studying industrial design and entrepreneurship at Western Sydney University. I began by asking him, what kind of project is this?
So we've been working on a board game which is quite different, quite unique. I've taken all the elements of board games from my childhood that I've liked and I've put them all together to make this, well, I think it's a pretty cool game. It's dynamic and it's mechanical. It also connects to Bluetooth on the phone, but it caters for all ranges as well, from I guess kids from age 6 all the way through to 99-year-olds.
And what's it called?
Monkey Madness.
And for the listener, can you describe what it looks like?
Yes. So it's basically made up of 5 islands, a volcano in the center island, and the gameplay is that you as a monkey need to appease the monkey god in the center who's very angry and he's about to erupt all over the islands. So you need to jump across to the other islands and, similar to the game of Operation, you need to scoop out bananas from their islands, from their pits, and bring it back to the volcano in the center. But the trick is that because it's mechanical, there are doors and walls that pop up and changes the board game design. It's always changing and it's customizable, so the players can actually change the durations of the popping up of the walls that pop up and down, and they can also change which directions the walls rotate in as well. So yeah, it's very dynamic. Each game is different.
And it looks like, are you using 3D printing to build the bits?
Yeah, so there's, just for this prototype, it's 3D printing, but the end design will be vacuum formed with injection molding. Yeah, but this is just proof of concept.
And is there a monkey?
There is. There's actually 8 monkeys, and as a player, you get to move around the board, steal bananas off other monkeys if you wish as well.
So when you play the game, you've got the islands, you've got the volcano, you've got the bananas, and you've got these moving walls and different things that come up and down. Is that everything we see?
Yeah, that's it. Oh, sorry. There is another key feature. Sorry, there are also treasure chests that pop up as well. Again, at random, totally preset by the player. And similar to in the game Monopoly, where you have those kind of community chest cards, these will also allow a player to pick up a card, and those cards are all randomly. They're quite funny, but they all affect the gameplay.
And where did you get the ideas for the game?
I'm actually not a board gamer, so this is kind of cool as a challenge. But yeah, no, it was trying to reach back and work out what games really affected me as a kid and what I liked from those, and just put it all together into this. So another cool feature with this, actually the main feature of this, is that the base unit, which controls the mechanism for the doors popping up and down and rotating, it's the main product in this. The board itself is made to be able to be replaced, so you can buy additional boards or upgrades. So this current board is the theme of the Monkey Madness, but there's Banks and Robbers, there's fishing games, there's Cluedo. Like, there's so many. The potential in this style of game is amazing. It's unlimited.
And you're doing entrepreneurship, so this will be for a company to sell?
Correct. Yeah, that's the idea. It's amazing the response I've had from people that I've already described this game to. Even this morning when I was picking up the printing material, the printer, the managing director there, actually he wanted me to come and demo it as well, because he was keen. He has contacts in places to make it happen as well. So it's been received really well.
Do you think you'll be playing more board games to get a broader range of ideas?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. There's so many cool things that can be adapted and changed with this as well. I've already got another 3-4 board designs, actually.
Have you made contact with the world of board game enthusiasts?
No, not yet. That's something that I should. Yeah.
You absolutely should. They're a big community and they're very keen.
Yeah, right. Cool. Yeah, definitely will.
What's your background? You're studying entrepreneurship. Yes. Have you studied engineering or anything else?
So I studied software engineering a long time ago, and I've had a software business, and I feel I've sort of conquered the digital space, and so studying industrial design, it's me taking on the tangible space. So I think both of them together is just a really good combination. And I've got, the whole point of coming back to university and studying these degrees is, I have other product ideas that I want to get out, but it just so happens that this is the things that happen along the way. It's come out really well. It's come out really good. Good opportunities.
Well, John, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was John Teague from Western Sydney University with his electro-mechanical board game. An artificial nose to smell out fresh food and genuine whiskey. Wentian Zhang is from the School of Biomechanical Engineering at the University of Technology, Sydney, working with Associate Professor Stephen Su on an electronic nose.
Actually, this nose was developed by ourselves, and from the software, hardware, mechanical, and everything, including the most important algorithm part. To first implementation is to detect illegal wildlife products such as our rhinoceros horn or ivory from the legal one. Legal one, let's say, is water buffalo horn, like this. And the second, we work with the Sydney Fish Market and the Australian Food Agility CRC on a project to detect the freshness of meat, fish, for the Australian snapper. Currently, this project is ongoing. Every day, we'll go to Sydney Fish Market to do the test. And perhaps within the next few weeks or few months, we will give the result for the freshness fish model. Then we can assess, deploy in the market to assess the freshness of them.
And how does the electronic nose work?
Actually, inside we build a gas sensor, a sensor area. Each sensor has a specific response to different odds. Let's say some sensors have a response to the alcohol, some sensors have a response to the methane. But all these things will combine together to generate a specific, let's say, old fingerprint to identify different persons. So for e-nose, this technique don't care about the specific chemical compound inside. We care about it from the whole picture of this item to identify that.
And here today, you've got some whiskey.
Yeah. Since the last two demo, we cannot bring the sample to here, considering some security issue or something else. So we bring out whiskey. One is a single malt, and the other is blend malt. So we read some scientific research about that because single malt only contains one malt. Blended malt also contain corn or rice when during the manufacturing procedure. So we think the smell should be different. So, but for me, I'm not drink any like this whiskey, so I cannot separate them. But for most of Australian people that drink whiskey, they can separate them. So the machine currently can also separate them now. Yeah, up to 85% classification accuracy, and within 2 minutes to 4 minutes.
And what inspired you to develop an electronic nose?
Yeah, the first is inspired by the dog. Since the wildlife protection welfare license, the project to detect ivory and rhinoceros horn, originally using dogs, and our supervisor think we use a machine to see if we can do that. And the second, when we start to build it, we inspired by the human node, how human ovulation system works and how the biostructure inside. So all these things inspired to build this thing.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was Wentian Zhang with his electronic nose from the University of Technology, Sydney. You're listening to Ian Woolf on Diffusion Science Radio. Send emails to science@diffusionradio.com. We're brought to you across Australia on the Community Radio Network and podcast over the internet on www.diffusionradio.com. And now the Fresh Science Bright Sparks Challenge. Sarah Brooker from Science in Public created Fresh Science to encourage early career scientists to find the story in their science and get it out to the public. Early career scientists get media training, and experience being interviewed on radio and TV before retiring for the evening to give their science the pub test. The Bright Spark Challenge is for these scientists to explain their research in the time it takes a sparkler to burn down. You'll hear about protecting tea trees and using algorithms to fight forest crimes. Here's your hostess, Sarah Brooker.
Good evening and welcome to Fresh Science New South Wales. Thank you so much for coming out and supporting these scientists. These are the future of the country. So today, across Sydney and across Australia, people went to work. And some of those people were researchers, they were scientists. And thank goodness for that, because those scientists, every day, they are learning something new. They are increasing our knowledge and they are taking us one step further about our understanding about how our body works, the animals, the plants around us, and how the world works. So thank you for doing that. Tonight, we've brought 11 of them to the pub, because in Australia, you've got to pass the pub test. So we are putting your science to the pub test. Welcome, my name is Sarah Brooker, and I run a science communication business called Science in Public. All of our work is helping scientists and science organisations get their work into the public space to the audiences that matter for them, whether that's to patients, to farmers, whether that is to business and industry or to governments, to give them the data that they need to make evidence-based decisions. So today, within an hour of arriving at the Maritime Museum, they were faced with two journalists from television. We had Channel 7 and Channel 9, so it was kind of jumping straight in there and learning the art of telling their science as a story, because that's what journalists trade in. They trade in stories. So we had Channel 7, Channel 9, 2GB, and the Sydney Morning Herald in one day. Today we brought in someone from a business background, a commercialisation advisor, to talk about the world. They soon learned that the science that you do is only half of it. If you want to take it across to industry and commercialise, you need to know what is the market, what is the need. So they shifted again and they pitched again. And tonight is about having fun. It's about telling your science to the family, to friends, to colleagues, to the mum and dad as you wait at that school gate. Because that's also important, is getting science out into the community around you. So very big thank you to those people who have supported Fresh Science. Western Sydney University, thank you, Kevin. University of New South Wales, do we have hands up from UNSW? Thank you. University of Sydney, Macquarie Uni, Richard, thank you, and a few others, thank you. And the Maritime Museum, who hosted us today. So very big thank you. They too share the mission that as researchers, we all need to communicate about our research. So you're welcome to tweet and to thank them. If you do tweet tonight, you can use the handle @ScienceInPublic and the hashtag #FreshScience. But don't give away the story. The reason these guys have been chosen is because they have research results or a discovery. So we are workshopping with them to get their work out into the public space. They're going to be doing a press release about their work and hopefully getting some media coverage. So feel free to tease, but don't give away the punchline. Shall we get them on stage? Anne, I hear you've nominated to go first. Thank you for nominating. So the challenge tonight, you can see I'm wearing a sparkly dress. I pull this out because we have some pretty bright sparks in the room. Thank you. And these bright sparks, we're going to challenge them. They're going to tell us their research in the time it takes a birthday sparkler to burn out. So you're welcome to gather around if you can't see. I think you'll hear the crowd oohing when it finishes. So Anne Griebel for Western Sydney University, you've got to hold a sparkler in one hand and a microphone in the other. And I've introduced you, so you don't need that 10 seconds. So Anne Griebel from Western Sydney University, please welcome her to the stage. Thank you.
Okay, you all probably noticed that our local trees aren't doing so well recently. And among them is our iconic Australian tea tree. My research discovered that our local tea tree species is more vulnerable to hot or dry conditions than our local eucalypt species. To discover that, I merged observations from airplanes, from satellites, and from the tallest mobile observatory in the southern hemisphere to discover that tea trees lose more water when it is really dry, which intensifies droughts, and they lose more heat when it is really hot, which intensifies heat waves. However, they sequester as much carbon as our native eucalypts, meaning we need to preserve them.
So, Anne, you're not finished. I've got a few questions because I'm curious. So, tea tree, I mean, I've heard the name. It sounds fairly Australian. Can you describe how common is it in Australia, and are we really worried if we lose a few?
Yeah, so the tea tree is very widely distributed. It ranges from southern Australia all the way to North Queensland. So it's the common swamp tree. It's also known as the paperbark tree, which probably some of you might more know from that come from Tasmania. And it is really known as an avid water user, but what was not known so far is that it has this huge carbon sequestration potential, and that this shrubby tree can sequester and store actually as much carbon as the normal eucalypt trees that are double as tall as the tea tree. So it's really important that we preserve it, especially here in the Greater Sydney region where we have this fragmented urban landscape, and the tea tree woodlands are the remaining refuge for many animals that that will lose their home if we don't preserve these vulnerable forests.
So how exactly do you measure how much water a tree absorbs or releases, or how much carbon it actually, can I say, what's another word for sequester? A carbon sink, it absorbs carbon?
Yeah, so it photosynthesizes, which means it takes the carbon from the atmosphere and it stores it in its either leaves or trunk or roots. And we measure this usually traditionally by just going again and again to the same tree and measuring its diameter, and then we can see how much it has grown. But a very recent or newer method to do this is very automated, where you just deploy these tall instruments way above the forest canopy, and they measure at the ecosystem scale, so at an integrated level, how much carbon and how much water is exchanged 10 times a second. So you can get really short resolution, but you can integrate this over really long time spans to get these annual budgets of water and carbon fluxes in an ecosystem.
So in this woodland, how far is it from Sydney?
It is in Sydney. So technically it's still within the Sydney metro regions. We're out here on the Western Sydney campus, and it is very fragmented throughout the Western Sydney regions, but there are a few remaining woodlands.
And you said you kind of go up to take this imaging. A tower or drones, or how are you getting the imaging?
Yeah, so we use both. We have a 30-meter tall radio tower that we can actually climb, go above the canopy and deploy our instruments there. But then I use drones and I use satellites and airplanes to measure forest structure and to look at changes in greenness and changes in gross primary productivity as well, that you can then relate to your local fluxes. So that the flux tower is really a means to bridge between this really large scale continental observations that you get from satellite, but these are at a really coarse resolution. So the flux tower brings that down to the local scale. And there's only 12 of them in Australia, so they are very rare and very special. And what we used here was a mobile flux tower. So that's the only mobile observatory in the southern hemisphere that goes up to 35 meter tall. So that is really unique, and I only know of 3 of these observatories in the world. So that allowed us to roll it in this Melaleuca-dominated or in this tea tree-dominated woodland section, and to differentiate between what the eucalypts do and what the Melaleucas or the tea trees do at the same time.
So what should we be telling? I mean, is this an important message for governments or local areas? I mean, what do you want people to do with this information?
I want them to recognize how important our local woodlands are, and that tea trees are not just a shrub that grows in the backyard and looks kind of not that pretty compared to these really tall, massive mountain ash trees, but that they have a really valuable function, not only in sequestering carbon, but also in providing habitat for many species that live in these woodlands. So as long as our urban sprawl keeps increasing and keeps putting pressure on these woodlands, we really need our governments to step in and to preserve the few remaining woodlands that are left in Sydney specifically.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Anne. Thank you. So I know that some of you in the room will have a science background. So if you've got any tricky questions, feel free to put your hand up. They've had a beer or two, so I think they're well prepared for it. Can I bring to the stage David Arnold, please, from Macquarie University? Yes, the beer must go down. Sorry. David, here's your microphone.
Thank you. Okay, thanks. So my name's David Arnold. I'm an applied mathematician at Macquarie University. So I've been studying the problem of illegal deforestation and animal poaching in protected regions. This is things like animal poaching in Africa, for example, elephants, illegal land clearing in Brazil in the Amazon rainforest. This is a problem around the world. So what we've done is we've come up with a predictive model using mathematics that can predict where in a national park the poaching activity is likely to take place. We can then hopefully use this information to come up with better patrol strategies to help prevent and catch these environmental criminals in the act.
Well done. So you're using algorithms to fight crime?
Exactly. Yeah, we've come up with an algorithm to predict crime, and so the next step would be to use this to help lower or help make it easier to catch the criminals, which is a good way of lowering the rate of crime.
So with an algorithm, you've got to put in bits and pieces. What exactly are you putting into your sum?
So we try to incorporate as much of the realistic things that are really important to the problem. So things like the shape of the national park, for example, the terrain. So an important part is how easy it is to access the site where these criminals are going to commit their crime. So if something is really mountainous, they're going to have to expend a lot more time and energy. That's going to be a less attractive site for them to commit their crime. Also, if there are patrollers, there are people trying to catch the criminals are going to want to avoid those areas that are highly patrolled. So we combine all these effects and come up with places where it's more likely that the criminals are going to try and commit their crime because there's less chance of being caught, it's easier to access, but also there's still a lot of benefit for them. They can cut down trees, there's going to be animals there for them. So this payoff between cost and benefit and being able to do these calculations in realistic situations for real national parks, this is our big contribution.
So are you taking your formula around to various countries and kind of selling your formula, giving it away?
This is something that we want to do. So we've come up with a model, we've got a proof of concept. Our next step is we have deforestation data from Brazil. So what we're doing is adapting our model, coming up with the specifics of the situation in Brazil, where we can say this is a model, it does fit this data, so our model is meaningful, our model is predicting something that's real, and then hopefully we can take that to national parks, other authorities around the world and say this is an idea, this is something that might be able to help you.
What's next? What else can you use your algorithm for? Or what other algorithms are you working on?
Okay, so in terms of the sort of mathematics behind the algorithm I'm talking about here, I think we have a lot of potential applications. It's not necessarily new fundamental techniques that we've developed, but applying these sort of techniques to ecology is a new idea. And I think there's other situations where you have movement through large domains. This is kind of the point that some places are easier or more difficult to access. So I think things like modeling invasive species as they move through a new region. So for example, in Australia would be cane toads moving south. I think we have potential that we could apply very similar ideas to situations like that.
Oh, go math superhero. Thank you very much, David. Thank you.
More Fresh Science Sparkler sessions with Sarah Brooker from Science in Public next week. You can see photos of all of this week's scientists on the website. And that's all from us this week on Diffusion. Are you a scientist, artist, biohacker or maker who'd like to be interviewed about your work? Would your company like to sponsor Diffusion? Send your contributions, opinions, helpful suggestions and donations to science@diffusionradio.com. That's science@diffusionradio.com. Please like the Diffusion Science Radio page on Facebook and rate the show on iTunes. Tell your friends. Follow me on Twitter @Ian Woolf. I produce Diffusion, which is broadcast around Australia to 28 stations on the Community Radio Network, including 2RBM in the Blue Mountains of New South Wales, 8CCC in Alice Springs and Tennant Creek, 2MBR in Nambucca Valley, 3MBR in the Mallee Border districts of Victoria and South Australia, City Park Radio 7LTN in Launceston, Tasmania, and 2XXFM in Canberra. Diffusion is syndicated globally on the National Science Foundation's Science 360 internet radio station and also on astronomy.fm. Subscribe to the podcast on the Diffusion website, www.diffusionradio.com. That's www.diffusionradio.com, and check the website for links, photos and videos from this week's show. If you enjoyed this show, you can explore more than 1,000 previous episodes archived on diffusionradio.com, where the shows are labelled by keywords so you can focus in on the stories you want to hear. Join my patrons at patreon.com/diffusionradio. Make a donation through paypal.me/Ian Woolf, or make an affiliate purchase through diffusionradio.com/support. Subscribe to the Diffusion YouTube channel at youtube.com/c/diffusionradio. I'm Ian Woolf. Join us inside your audio device of choice for more science wondering next week on Diffusion Science Radio.
Science is fun. It helps you to learn, to know, and to appreciate. When you study science, you may go on field trips. You discover the marvelous interrelationships between all living things. You learn to read the history of the Earth as it is written in rocks and fossils. You find out what makes things tick. Everything from a molecule to a living organism. In the study of science is found the most useful and satisfying knowledge of man. Knowledge of his physical world, its past, its present, and its future. And in your moments of relaxation, now and in the years to come, you will find the study of science leading you into fascinating pursuits. Photography, collecting. Why study science? Study science because you will find in the study of science a richer, more rewarding life.